Navigating between the Kundalini process, creative work and life demands. Background. Dear Igor, after our Skype meeting on August 19th, I had a major shift both inside and with my beloved. Thank you. Now, during Kundalini rising, I feel the energy in my throat right away. Like there's a direct channel between my second and fifth chakra. Also began to feel it in my ears. My creative energy is pouring out of me through piano performance, my profession, like never before. Question A. Is this a right thing? Okay, background B. At the same time, life demands my attention, my son, my teaching practice and other things which need to be taken care of. I'm trying to divide my days as to leave parts. First half of the day to music and Shakti, the rest to whatever needs to be done. Also, while there's an understanding of surrender in love and music, and seeing that it brings to me to amazing places, there's still a lot of anxiety about life, 3D choices, which need to be made, my son's school applications, dealing with certain issues, etc. Question B. It's not easy to navigate, and I feel as if I can't devote my full attention only to the process of Kundalini and creative work now. Does it slower my development? Or is it part of the process of learning to balance it? Any tips on how to keep the balance in real life? Do we have to learn to surrender there as well?
Well, can respond starting with question 2 and just mix and match perhaps. When you say, do we have to learn to surrender there as well? And that precedes by in real life, question mark? Well, that, not as well. I would say that that is the first real place of surrender. Of course, I understand that this is all a matter of language, and what you refer here, real life, is life of what most of us call real, the life as we know it, or as John Lennon put it some times ago, life is what happens when we're busy making other plans. But to me, this seems to be the first area to surrender. The first and primal area is to surrender to that what is, what you called here, real life. Because there are, if you will, spheres, areas. If that first sphere of life is not surrendered, then what is there to surrender? How can the surrender be deeper? And everything that you have shared here is on the order, like in the order of the day. It's absolutely all of us having to deal with what is here and now. And in my experience, it is where the real test, and the real test above all else, a test and understanding of what is going on as opposed to what we imagining is going on. And that is when we're having to balance the intensity of awakening with the demands that the so-called real life puts on us, with all its nuances and with all its beauty and brutality. Completely. So let's just make it very direct here. So the transition here is first in your understanding. The quantum leap, the shift, needs to happen in your understanding that when you say here that I'm trying to divide my days as to leave parts, first half of the day to music and Shakti, and the rest to whatever needs to be done. This is already an erroneous thinking. Even if this still is in the language, it is still even it only can come from a place of misunderstanding where confusion will begin to reign sooner or later. Even if this is your experience at the moment, that there is time when you play music, and there is time of the day when you are given to spiritual practice, I presume, or when you are simply given to that process. You say here, music from the capital M and Shakti from the capital S. And the rest, whatever needs to be done. I understand exactly what you're saying. And yet still I invite you to make that shift. Is that there is only Shakti. Shakti, whether you are doing music or whether music is done by itself, simply is playing through you, through your heart, through your hands, through your ears. And the rest, whatever is left to be done, is also domain of Shakti. When you step out of the recording studio, whether you stepped out of the piano class where you teach, whether you stepped out from the rehearsal, whether you stepped out from the concert and stepped into the supermarket, into driving your car or into the taxi, whether you're going into your bed or coming out of it, it's all in the domain of Shakti. And Shakti is power. The term Shakti is that Sanskrit term for power. Whose power that is? Because there cannot be just power. And that power must belong to someone. Whose that power is? That Shakti. It's the power of Shiva. And Shiva is awareness. Pure awareness. So it's the power of your awareness. It's all there is. The power of your awareness is where the music comes from, and music is being made by. It is the ears that hear the music. It is the notes that strike the chord, or rather the chords that produce the notes. It is the light in a supermarket and the till and the bill and the bull of the daily life. All this is power of awareness. And it will take time until it becomes the power of your own awareness. In other words, at first it may seem as power out there, power outside of your domain, and it's not bad, it's good. Give all that to the power that be. Let thy will be done. An old, good, wise proverb. Let thy will be done, because it will be done anyway. It will be done just like you driving the car, it's fully driving itself. And it's not making it easier to drive by saying and insisting that if I'm not driving this car, the car is not going to drive. It's not going to drive, it's going to collapse. All the system will go out. I have to hold the wheel, I have to have my foot on the pedal, I have to have on the brakes, on accelerator, and all the rest of it. Yes, of course it is. But you're not driving the car. The car is driving perfectly by itself. What is this big deal holding the wheel and having a foot? It's a piece of cake, it's a joy. You can listen Mozart while driving the car, can't you? Can't you not? Of course you can. Everyone can. Mozart or Massive Attack, doesn't matter. You drive your car and your attention can be on zillion other things. You can even listen to Osho. So, who is driving the car? Relieve yourself. Release all this to the power that be, and relieve yourself of that duty that you are the one who is driving. I'll give you even further example. It's not even the situation where you are in the car holding the wheel and the foot is on the accelerator, brakes, or so forth. It's not just fully automatic car, or maybe car in the future. No. It's a situation where you seems you're driving something, but it's actually driving you, and all you're doing is pretending that something is happening. That is more like it. But it's very hard for us human beings to accept that. We want to have our hands on the wheel. Or we don't want to have our hands on the wheel and we just like one hand on the windowsill, especially if it's a convertible Mercedes from 56, and the hand is just barely touching it, you know? It's just like the joy, you see, of driving that, you know? Barely touching the wheel. I'm not taking fun of the situation here. I'm being dead serious. You can't even imagine how serious I'm here, right now. Because you're asking me about surrender, where to begin, where to reconcile. And the last thing I want is for you to perpetuate that separation between the music, the Shakti, and the rest of the world, and call it the real life. There's no real life. Tell me what was for Mozart music and life. That the whole tragedy of that story is in the fact that Mozart was having just as much kick from the most amazing performance, just as he would hear someone, a fiddler on the street, playing for some petty cash. It's a state of consciousness, nothing else. That's why I said it's that power of that awareness. It's that Shakti of that Shiva. And that is always in a driving seat. No one else drives the car. No other power drives the car other than Shakti. Nor just that. That car is not driven just by Shakti. That airplane, that train, that railway, that internet, that computer, that mouth that speaks now. The earth itself rotates around its own axis and around the sun. All this is the power of Shakti. If I, for a moment, think that I'm involved in that, it's an exhausting affair. That's where you begin to relax. Then there is no real life or unreal life. There's no real life and spiritual life. It's a big difference between a darkened place of a Carnegie Hall and spotlights on the stage and the neon light of a supermarket. Nothing can be far apart. Yet the light on the stage and the light in a supermarket is lit by the same light. The same light. Yeah, of course I prefer Carnegie Hall. Of course you prefer Carnegie Hall. Or a small, cozy theater to play, to recite. But make no mistake that whatever we do in life, whatever happens when we make choices, it is that power behind, always that power. So don't just marginalize Shakti to that part of the day when you play music and when you have the chance to fully experience it. And then you have to go busy around the daily affairs. Nor do I advocate or advise you to completely lose any sense of reality, so that when you go out, so to speak, in that real world, then you begin to topple over without knowing what is happening. No. But it is happening in the understanding, that's all. In your understanding. That bridge has to happen in your understanding. It doesn't have to happen in the way you go about the affairs in the world. The non-doership is a prerequisite. Assigning all actions to the divine actually is a relief. It does not take us at all away from the necessity of performing actions for the sake of actions, because that's our nature. It's not that somehow I'm advocating sitting on a sofa all day long and meditating. No one can do that. You are not ready to do that. Your physiology is not ready to do that. Maximum you can sit 2 hours maybe in meditation in one go. Maximum if you are advanced meditator. Therefore, 30, 40 to an hour at a time is always needed. And then you are charged with that energy. Then that energy reverberates through your entire structure, through your entire neurophysiology. And then it's easier to take the world at its face, as it were. So the question here is, you're saying it's not easy to navigate because there is still a lot of doership. There's still a lot of that pulling this rope. It's still a lot of that driving that car when a car is actually perfectly driving. When you sit on the computer, do you actually try to figure out how algorithmically computer functions? No, you're taking it for granted. Click, 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 click. Easy. That's why we all love computers, because totally we don't do nothing here. Nor do you try to connect through the power of your mind to the internet. You're not using your psychic powers to connect to the internet, do you? No. We don't do that. In the same way, there is a cosmic computation takes place. Cosmic computation that delivers, transforms, gets transactions done, and we are seemingly involved. Yes, bills need to be paid. Yes, our children need to be taken care of. And in the moment in time, it feels so real and so overpowering that we call it real life. But I want to take your attention back to that Shakti of that Shiva, to that power of that awareness. That is primal. Always primal. Everything comes out and gets reabsorbed in that which is your awareness. So you can be amidst of any action, amidst of any enterprise, amidst of any situation, and not at the expense of losing the power of that awareness. Then Shakti will always be in the driving seat. So you're asking here, I feel as if I can't devote my full attention only to the process of Kundalini and creative work now. Does it slow my development? No. Nobody is asking you to give 24 hours to development of Kundalini process. Kundalini does its work, whether you like it or not. But if you give yourself to practice, if you create sadhana, you will create support. And that support will be for both, for your spiritual growth and for what you call a real life. Every facet and every aspect of that life. It has to. Yes, certain things will come when they're meant to. Certain things will have to be forgone because it's also mental. So that is the way to balance it. The balance here is in not taking this onto your shoulders, not taking it at the chin. And the first question is, simple answer is yes, it is the right thing. Yes, whatever is happening to you, just remember that I would still encourage you to not to turn it into DIY. You need to have more than guidance through the sessions and more than guidance through these questions and answers. So I would just squeeze it in and remind you that for that reason there are retreats, workshops, immersions. It is for that reason where you can go and ground yourself in your own power, even if for a time being, like plug into a much more powerful source, much more powerful rechargeable battery than just a temporal whatever you run on.
And having a community around you, which...
And the community, exactly, where you will find the support and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Support and understanding so that you don't feel isolated and confused as what is real in life and what is not. Because there is one inevitable force, is that life will always, as a vortex, will pull us into that direction of surface existence, because that's in the nature of collective consciousness. And living in the culture which is not at all culture of awakened culture, how can that be easy? I'm sorry, it cannot be easy to awaken in the culture which is asleep. I mean, come on, let's get real. I mean, why can't we figure that out by now, that it's not easy to awaken when everyone else is asleep, or majority are asleep? It doesn't matter that in a Facebook it happens that everyone is awakened. It's just because the combination, the algorithm, you have the friends associated with that, it seems like the world is already awakened. When you go on Facebook, we're already in Satya Yuga. I'm just exaggerating, of course, but no, it's not. It's not at all.